What if I told you that thousands of people have experienced miraculous interventions within 72 hours of saying this ancient prayer? What if the solution to your most pressing problem has been waiting for you in the tender heart of Saint Anthony of Padua? Hit that like button right away if you're ready to discover the prayer that has moved heaven and earth for over 800 years. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because what you're about to learn could change everything you thought you knew about divine intervention. The story I'm about to share happened just 3 weeks ago. Maria from Brazil had lost her wedding ring. Not just any ring, but her grandmother's precious heirloom that contained the only photograph of her great-grandfather. The police had given up. Insurance companies refused to help. Every jeweler in the city said it was impossible to replace. She was devastated. But then she remembered something her Catholic grandmother had whispered to her years ago about Saint Anthony and urgent needs. Within 18 hours of praying the prayer you're about to learn, Maria received a phone call that would make you question everything you believe about coincidence. A construction worker had found her ring buried beneath concrete that was being demolished across town, in a place Maria had never even visited. The ring was perfectly intact. The photograph was still there. The impossible had happened. But here's what makes this even more extraordinary. Maria's story isn't unique. In fact, Saint Anthony of Padua has been called upon for urgent miracles since 1232, and the documented cases of his intercession number in the millions. Today you're going to learn the exact prayer that has unlocked these miracles, but more importantly, you're going to understand why this particular saint responds so powerfully to urgent requests. Are you someone who needs something right away? Has life placed you in a corner where only divine intervention seems possible? Keep watching, because what happened to Maria could happen to you, but only if you understand the 3 essential elements that make this prayer so effective. Saint Anthony wasn't always known as the miracle worker of urgent requests. Born Fernando Martins in Lisbon around 1195, he lived during one of history's most turbulent periods. Portugal was fighting for its identity. The Crusades were raging across Europe. People desperately needed hope, and they needed it fast. But Fernando chose a different path, one that would eventually make him the most invoked saint for immediate help in all of Christianity. Something remarkable happened when Fernando became Brother Anthony. He developed what theologians call supernatural urgency, an ability to respond to desperate situations with miraculous speed. Historical records show that even during his lifetime, people would travel hundreds of miles to seek his help for problems that needed immediate solutions: lost items, missing persons, urgent healing, financial crises. Anthony seemed to specialize in the impossible cases that couldn't wait. But why Anthony? What makes this Franciscan friar different from other saints? The answer lies in his unique spiritual gift that earned him the title Hammer of Heretics. Anthony possessed extraordinary wisdom and the ability to see through to the heart of any problem instantly. When he prayed, he didn't just ask for help. He commanded spiritual forces with an authority that heaven itself recognized. Here's something most people don't know about Saint Anthony that explains why his interventions happen so quickly. During his life, he performed a miracle that defied the laws of physics itself. He was preaching in Italy while simultaneously appearing in Portugal to save his father from execution. 2 places at once, the same day, witnessed by hundreds. This bilocation miracle established Anthony as the saint who transcends normal limitations of time and space. Can you see why desperate people throughout history have turned to Saint Anthony? When you're facing a crisis that needs immediate resolution, you want someone who has proven they can work outside normal constraints. You want someone who specializes in the urgent and impossible. Let me share another story that happened just last month. James from Chicago was facing foreclosure on his family home. The bank had given him 48 hours to produce $15,000 or lose everything his grandfather had built. His credit was destroyed. His family had no money to lend. Every legal avenue had been exhausted. He was literally hours away from homelessness. James had heard about St. Anthony from his Catholic neighbor, but he was skeptical. How could a 13th century saint help with a modern banking crisis? But desperation makes believers of us all. At 11 p.m. on his last night in the house, James said the prayer you're about to learn. He said it with tears streaming down his face, begging Anthony to help his family. At 6 a.m. the next morning, just 7 hours later, James received a call from a lawyer he had never met. A distant relative he didn't even know existed had died 6 months earlier and left him exactly $15,247 in a trust fund. The paperwork had been lost in bureaucratic delays, but the lawyer had worked through the night to process everything. James saved his home with 2 hours to spare. Coincidence? Let's look at the mathematical probability. An unknown inheritance arriving at the exact moment of greatest need, processed by lawyers working overnight, for the precise amount needed plus a little extra. The odds are so astronomical that dismissing this as mere chance requires more faith than believing in miracles. But here's what I want you to understand about St. Anthony's miracles. They're not random acts of divine favoritism. There's a specific spiritual mechanism at work, and when you understand it, you can position yourself to receive the same kind of urgent intervention. Comment below right away and tell me, what urgent situation in your life needs St. Anthony's immediate attention? Don't hold back. Anthony specializes in the impossible cases that make other people shake their heads in disbelief. The prayer you're about to learn has 3 distinct parts, and each part serves a specific spiritual purpose. But before I reveal this prayer, you need to understand something crucial about timing. St. Anthony's miracles typically manifest within 3 days, but the most urgent cases often receive attention within hours. This isn't because Anthony plays favorites, it's because desperate faith creates a spiritual frequency that pierces heaven itself. Throughout history, the Catholic Church has documented what they call Anthony's 3-day rule. When someone prays to St. Anthony with genuine urgency and complete surrender, intervention typically comes within 72 hours. Sometimes it's a direct miracle. Sometimes it's an extraordinary coincidence that solves the problem. Sometimes it's sudden clarity about what action to take. But something always shifts within 3 days. This pattern has been so consistent that many Catholics automatically give St. Anthony 3 days to respond before seeking other solutions. During World War II, resistance fighters would pray to Anthony before dangerous missions, knowing they needed protection immediately, not next week. Soldiers' letters home document miraculous escapes, last-minute rescue, and impossible survival stories that happened within hours of these urgent prayers. The spiritual principle here is what mystics call necessity magnetism. When your need is genuine and urgent, when you've exhausted human solutions, when only divine intervention can help, that desperation creates a spiritual magnetic field that draws supernatural assistance. St. Anthony, having lived through his own moments of desperate need, responds to this frequency faster than almost any other saint. Think about it. Anthony lived in an age of plague, war, and uncertainty. He understood urgent needs personally. He knew what it felt like to need a miracle right away. This personal experience of desperation makes him uniquely qualified to recognize and respond to your urgent requests. But there's something else you need to know about Anthony's urgency. His miracles don't just solve immediate problems. They often reveal solutions that transform entire life situations. The lost wedding ring leads to reconciliation with estranged family. The emergency money comes with opportunities for permanent financial stability. The urgent healing brings spiritual awakening that changes everything. Let me tell you about Margaret from Ireland, whose story illustrates this perfectly. Margaret's 16-year-old son had been missing for 3 days. Police had no leads. Search parties found nothing. Social media appeals went unanswered. As a single mother, Margaret felt completely helpless watching every parent's nightmare unfold in real time. On the 3rd night, Margaret fell to her knees in her son's empty bedroom and prayed to St. Anthony with an intensity that surprised even her. She wasn't particularly religious, but desperation had awakened something fierce in her faith. She begged Anthony to bring her son home safely, promising to dedicate her life to helping other families if he would just intervene. At 3 a.m., her phone rang. Her son was calling from a hospital 2 hours away. He had been found unconscious in a remote area where no one should have discovered him. But here's the miraculous part. The person who found him was a search and rescue volunteer who had felt an unexplainable urge to check one more location before ending his shift. That volunteer had been praying to St. Anthony for guidance about where to search. Margaret's son recovered completely, but the miracle didn't end there. The experience transformed both of them. Margaret started a support group for families of missing persons. Her son became an advocate for troubled youth. What began as an urgent prayer for immediate help became a calling that has helped hundreds of families. This is how St. Anthony works, solving the urgent need while opening doors to deeper purpose. Share this video right away with someone who needs to hear about St. Anthony's power to handle urgent situations. You never know whose life might be changed by learning about this miraculous intercession. The prayer itself has been refined over 8 centuries of use. It's not a magic formula. It's a spiritual key that unlocks Anthony's particular gift for urgent intervention. But you must understand each element to pray it effectively. The first element is acknowledgement of Anthony's proven power. You're not approaching an untested saint or making a general request to heaven. You're specifically calling upon someone with an 800-year track record of urgent interventions. This acknowledgement isn't flattery. It's recognition of spiritual authority that commands heavenly attention. The second element is complete honesty about your situation. Anthony responds to genuine need, not manufactured drama. You must present your case with the same clarity and urgency you would use if explaining your situation to a wise judge who could solve everything with one decision. No exaggeration needed. Genuine urgency speaks for itself. The third element is surrender to Anthony's wisdom about timing and method. You're asking for urgent help, but you're not dictating how that help should come. This surrender creates spiritual space for Anthony to work in ways that might surprise you. Remember, his miracles often come through unexpected channels that human planning could never orchestrate. Here's the prayer that has unlocked urgent miracles for countless people throughout history. I want you to listen carefully to every word because each phrase has been chosen for maximum spiritual impact. Saint Anthony, you are the saint of miracles and urgent needs. I come to you in my moment of desperate need, trusting in your proven power to intercede with heaven on behalf of those who cry out for immediate help. You who found solutions for the desperate during your earthly life, please hear my urgent request. My situation is this. Here, you clearly state your urgent need. I have tried human solutions and found them inadequate. I have reached the limit of my own resources. I need divine intervention, and I need it quickly. Saint Anthony, you who experienced bilocation and worked miracles that defied natural law, I believe you can intercede for my urgent need. I trust that your compassionate heart understands the urgency of my situation. I surrender my timeline to your wisdom, but I beg you to move swiftly on my behalf. If you grant me this urgent miracle, I promise to share the story of your intercession with others who need hope. I will never forget your kindness, and I will encourage others to turn to you in their moments of desperate need. Saint Anthony, patron of urgent causes and impossible situations, pray for me with the same intensity that you preached against heresy. Present my case before the throne of God with the authority that heaven has granted you. I trust in your intercession. I believe in your power. I surrender to your wisdom. Through Christ our Lord, who worked alongside you in life and works through you still. Amen. But praying the words alone isn't enough. There are specific conditions that activate Anthony's urgent response, and most people never learn these crucial elements. The prayer must be said with what the saints call desperate faith, the kind of complete reliance on divine help that comes when human solutions have been exhausted. This isn't casual asking, it's the spiritual equivalent of calling 911. Anthony recognizes this tone of genuine desperation and responds accordingly. Timing matters more than most people realize. The most powerful moments to pray this prayer are during the darkest hours of your crisis. When fear is strongest, when hope seems most distant, when you're facing your absolute deadline, that's when desperate faith is purest and most effective. Anthony responds to authentic urgency, not manufactured drama. You must also pray this prayer with complete honesty about your situation. Don't minimize your need or exaggerate your crisis. Present your case to Anthony exactly as it is. He can handle the truth, and he responds better to authentic desperation than to polite requests. Physical positioning enhances the prayer's effectiveness. If possible, kneel while praying, not because God requires this, but because kneeling helps generate the humility and urgency that Anthony recognizes. If you can't kneel due to physical limitations, the heart position matters more than body position. Many people ask about repetition. Should you pray this prayer once or multiple times? History shows that Anthony often responds to a single urgent prayer said with complete faith. However, if your situation continues beyond 72 hours, repeat the prayer daily until you receive clear resolution. Anthony doesn't forget urgent requests. Persistence demonstrates continued faith rather than lack of trust. Let me tell you about Carlos from Mexico, whose experience demonstrates the importance of these prayer conditions. Carlos had been diagnosed with a brain tumor on a Friday afternoon. Surgery was scheduled for Monday morning. His family was devastated. They had the weekend to process what might be their final days together. Carlos wasn't particularly religious, but his grandmother had taught him about St. Anthony years ago. On Sunday night, facing surgery the next morning, Carlos knelt in his backyard under the stars and prayed the urgent prayer with tears streaming down his face. He met every condition perfectly: genuine desperation, honest presentation of his need, complete surrender to Anthony's wisdom, and authentic faith born from having no other options. Monday morning, the pre-surgery scans showed something that made the doctors call in specialists. The tumor had shrunk by 60% overnight. The surgeon postponed the operation, ordering additional tests. By Wednesday, the tumor was completely gone. Medical records documented the disappearance, but doctors had no scientific explanation for such rapid change. Carlos's story illustrates why conditions matter when praying to St. Anthony. His desperate situation generated desperate faith. His honesty about facing possible death created the authenticity Anthony recognizes. His complete surrender to whatever might happen opened spiritual space for miraculous intervention. Comment below and share. Have you ever experienced a situation so urgent that only a miracle could help? Anthony specializes in these impossible cases that push us beyond human solutions. Understanding why St. Anthony responds so powerfully to urgent requests requires looking at his earthly life and spiritual authority. Anthony wasn't just another medieval preacher. He was someone who consistently delivered immediate results when people needed help desperately. During his lifetime, Anthony developed what historians call crisis magnetism. Wherever urgent problems arose, lost children, false accusations, family emergencies, community disasters, people instinctively brought these situations to Anthony. And he consistently provided immediate solutions that seemed to transcend normal limitations. The bilocation miracle I mentioned earlier wasn't Anthony's only documented case of transcending physical laws. Witnesses recorded multiple instances of Anthony appearing simultaneously in different locations, always in response to urgent needs that required immediate attention. This established him as the saint who operates outside normal constraints when emergency intervention is needed. Church historians have identified specific patterns in Anthony's urgent interventions. He responds fastest to situations involving innocent suffering, children in danger, families facing homelessness, people falsely accused, individuals facing health crises beyond their control. These situations trigger what mystics call Anthony's protective urgency. He also responds quickly to lost items that have deep sentimental or practical value. This isn't because Anthony cares more about objects than people, but because lost items often represent lost security, lost memories, or lost hope. Anthony understands that recovering these items can restore much more than their material value. Financial emergencies receive Anthony's immediate attention when they threaten basic survival needs. Anthony lived among the poor and understood how quickly financial crises can destroy families. He responds urgently to prayers from people facing homelessness, starvation, or inability to care for dependent family members. But here's something remarkable about Anthony's urgent interventions. They often come with what spiritual directors call divine timing precision. The help arrives not just quickly, but at the exact moment of greatest need, creating maximum impact and undeniable recognition of supernatural assistance. Remember James from Chicago, who needed exactly $15,000 within 48 hours to save his family home? The inheritance wasn't just the right amount. It was processed at the precise moment of greatest desperation, arriving with hours to spare. This timing precision is Anthony's signature on urgent miracles. Maria from Brazil found her grandmother's ring exactly when hope was completely gone, discovered by someone who was drawn to search in an impossible location. Margaret from Ireland received the call about her missing son at 3 a.m. on the third night, the moment when despair was deepest and her prayer was most desperate. This precision timing serves multiple purposes. It maximizes the psychological and spiritual impact of the miracle. It eliminates reasonable doubt about supernatural intervention. It creates powerful testimony that encourages others to trust Anthony in their urgent needs. And it demonstrates heaven's intimate knowledge of human desperation and perfect timing for divine intervention. Anthony's urgent miracles also carry what theologians call multiplication effects. The immediate problem gets solved, but additional blessings often follow that address underlying issues the person didn't even pray about. This is because Anthony sees not just the urgent crisis, but the deeper patterns that created vulnerability to such crises. Let me share the story of Patricia from Canada, which perfectly illustrates this multiplication effect. Patricia was a single mother of 3 who received an eviction notice giving her 30 days to find new housing. In her city's rental market, this was essentially impossible. She had bad credit from her divorce, limited income from part-time work, and no savings for deposits. Traditional housing assistance had year-long waiting lists. Patricia prayed to St. Anthony with the desperation of a mother facing homelessness with her children. She asked specifically for housing within 30 days, an urgent, seemingly impossible request given her circumstances. Within 1 week, Patricia received a call from a property management company. A landlord had specifically requested a single mother tenant for a renovated apartment. The rent was within Patricia's budget. No credit check required. No deposit needed. Move-in available immediately. But the multiplication effect was just beginning. The landlord, impressed by Patricia's determination to provide for her children, offered her a part-time job managing his other properties. The additional income allowed Patricia to enroll in evening business classes. 2 years later, she had her own property management company. What began as an urgent prayer for basic shelter became a complete life transformation. This is how Anthony works, solving the immediate crisis while opening doors to long-term stability and growth. If you're feeling encouraged by these stories, hit that like button to help other people discover St. Anthony's power for urgent situations. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because I share miracle stories like these regularly. The spiritual mechanics behind Anthony's urgent interventions involve principles that most people never understand. When you grasp these principles, you can pray with greater confidence and position yourself to receive faster responses. The first principle is what mystics call desperation purification. When your need becomes truly urgent, when human solutions prove inadequate, when you face genuine desperation, this strips away spiritual distractions and creates pure, focused faith. Anthony responds to this purified spiritual frequency faster than casual requests. Think about it from Anthony's perspective in heaven. He receives millions of prayer requests, but the ones marked by genuine urgency and desperate faith stand out like emergency sirens. These prayers carry a spiritual intensity that commands immediate attention because they represent authentic human need rather than mere wants or preferences. The second principle is surrender activation. Urgent situations force complete surrender to divine will because you literally cannot control the outcome through human effort. This surrender creates spiritual space for miraculous intervention. When you truly let go of trying to control how help arrives, you open channels for Anthony to work in unexpected ways. Many people pray for urgent help, while simultaneously trying to manipulate the outcome through their own efforts. This creates spiritual interference that can slow divine intervention. The most effective urgent prayers combine specific requests with complete surrender about methods and timing. The third principle is testimony commitment. Notice that every effective urgent prayer includes a promise to share the story of Anthony's intervention with others. This isn't bargaining with God, it's recognizing that miracles serve multiple purposes. Your urgent miracle can become hope for others facing similar crises. Anthony responds particularly well to prayers that include this testimony element because he understands how urgent miracles create ripple effects of faith and hope. Your story of urgent intervention could be exactly what someone else needs to hear during their own crisis. These principles explain why some urgent prayers receive immediate attention while others seem to take longer. It's not about worthiness or favoritism, it's about spiritual conditions that optimize divine intervention. When desperation is genuine, surrender is complete, and testimony is committed, Anthony can work with maximum effectiveness. Let me tell you about Rachel from Australia, whose experience demonstrates all three principles working together. Rachel's 8-year-old daughter had been kidnapped by her ex-husband in violation of custody orders. Police were involved, but international borders complicated immediate action. Rachel was facing every parent's worst nightmare with limited legal recourse. Rachel had reached complete desperation. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. Human solutions were moving too slowly. She had been forced into total surrender because her own efforts were proving inadequate, and she made a clear commitment to testimony. If Anthony brought her daughter home safely, she would dedicate her life to helping other parents in similar situations. These three conditions created perfect spiritual circumstances for urgent intervention. Within 36 hours of her desperate prayer, Rachel's ex-husband made a mistake that led to his immediate location and arrest. Her daughter was safely returned within 48 hours of the initial prayer. But Rachel kept her testimony commitment. She started an organization that helps parents navigate international custody violations. Her urgent miracle became a lifeline for hundreds of other families facing similar crises. This demonstrates how Anthony's urgent interventions serve purposes beyond solving individual problems. The multiplication effect of Anthony's urgent miracles creates what spiritual directors call crisis-to-calling transformation. Your most desperate hour becomes the foundation for serving others in their desperate hours. Your urgent miracle becomes their source of hope. Comment below and tell me, if Saint Anthony solved your most urgent problem right away, how would you share that miracle to help others? Anthony responds powerfully to prayers that include this forward-thinking testimony commitment. Historical analysis reveals fascinating patterns in Anthony's urgent interventions across different centuries and cultures. These patterns provide insights that can help you pray more effectively and recognize Anthony's response when it comes. Medieval records show that Anthony's urgent miracles often involved what appeared to be extraordinary coincidences, the right person appearing at the right moment, the right information arriving precisely when needed, the right opportunity opening just in time. This pattern continues today, suggesting that Anthony works through orchestrating circumstances rather than suspending natural laws. This understanding is crucial for recognizing Anthony's intervention when it happens. Many people miss their miracles because they expect dramatic supernatural displays rather than perfectly timed coincidences that solve urgent problems. Anthony's miracles often look like extraordinary luck to outside observers, but the timing precision and perfect outcomes reveal supernatural orchestration. During the Renaissance, urgent prayers to Anthony frequently resulted in what historians call knowledge miracles, sudden insights about solutions that had been invisible before prayer. People would pray desperately about urgent problems, then wake up with clear understanding of exactly what steps to take. These insight miracles continue today and represent one of Anthony's most common intervention methods. The Industrial Revolution brought new types of urgent crises, job losses, factory accidents, urban poverty, but Anthony's response patterns remained consistent. He continued to provide immediate practical solutions through orchestrated coincidences, sudden insights, and unexpected assistance from human helpers who felt inexplicably motivated to intervene. Modern documentation shows Anthony's urgent miracles adapting to contemporary situations while maintaining historical patterns. Lost items turn up in impossible places discovered by people who felt unexplained urges to search there. Financial emergencies get resolved through unexpected sources that appear precisely when hope seems lost. Missing persons are found by search teams who feel guided to check specific locations. These patterns suggest that Anthony works primarily by influencing human hearts and minds to take actions that create solutions. The construction worker who found Maria's ring beneath concrete felt compelled to check that specific location. The lawyer who worked through the night to process James's inheritance felt unusually motivated to complete the paperwork immediately. Understanding these patterns helps you recognize Anthony's intervention and also explains why urgent prayers work better when they include openness to unexpected solution methods. Anthony might solve your urgent housing need through a landlord who suddenly decides to waive normal requirements. He might resolve your urgent financial crisis through a distant relative you didn't know existed. He might reunite you with a missing loved one through a search volunteer who feels guided to look in exactly the right place. This pattern recognition also explains why testimony commitment is so important. When you understand how Anthony typically works, you can identify his intervention even in situations that might appear to be mere coincidence. Sharing these stories helps other people recognize similar patterns in their own lives. Let me tell you about David from South Africa, whose experience perfectly illustrates how recognizing Anthony's patterns led to continued miraculous assistance. David had lost his job 2 days before his mortgage payment was due. Default would mean losing his family home. He had no savings, no immediate employment prospects, and no family able to help. David prayed urgently to St. Anthony, then spent the next day applying for emergency loans that all got rejected. But he remembered reading about Anthony's pattern of working through unexpected human assistance. Instead of giving up, David started paying attention to every person he encountered, wondering if Anthony might be working through someone he would normally overlook. Late that afternoon, David struck up a conversation with an elderly man at a coffee shop. The man mentioned that his son owned a construction company and was desperately looking for experienced project managers. David had construction experience from years ago, but hadn't considered it relevant to his current crisis. The conversation led to a phone call, which led to an immediate job offer with a signing bonus that covered his mortgage payment. To outside observers, this looked like a fortunate coincidence. Unemployed man meets person with job connection at random coffee shop. But David recognized Anthony's typical pattern of orchestrating precisely timed human connections. This recognition led him to continue watching for Anthony's subtle interventions in other areas of his life. Over the following months, David noticed a pattern of helpful coincidences whenever he faced urgent needs. The right person with the right solution appeared at exactly the right moment, usually through circumstances that seemed random but felt divinely orchestrated. David had learned to recognize Anthony's working style and position himself to receive continued assistance. Hit the like button right away if these pattern insights are helping you understand how St. Anthony might be working in your own life. And make sure to subscribe because understanding these spiritual patterns can transform how you recognize divine intervention. The global reach of Anthony's urgent miracles provides additional evidence of his unique responsiveness to desperate prayer. Catholic churches worldwide maintain records of urgent interventions attributed to Saint Anthony, and the consistency across cultures and centuries is remarkable. In the Philippines, Anthony is called upon for typhoon protection, and churches document numerous cases of communities that prayed urgently to Anthony, experiencing minimal damage while surrounding areas suffered devastation. The timing pattern remains consistent: urgent prayer followed by immediate protection that defies statistical probability. Brazilian Catholics have documented thousands of urgent interventions involving missing persons, financial emergencies, and health crises. The pattern of rapid response within 72 hours holds consistent across different regions and social circumstances. European churches maintain detailed records of Anthony's urgent interventions during both World Wars, when desperate families prayed for immediate protection of loved ones in combat. Military chaplains reported extraordinary survival stories among soldiers who carried prayers to Saint Anthony into battle. African Catholic communities document urgent miracles involving crop failures, drought relief, and protection from violence. The same patterns emerge: desperate prayer followed by precisely timed intervention that provides exactly what was needed when it was needed most. This global consistency suggests that Anthony's responsiveness to urgent prayer transcends cultural differences and historical periods. Whether you're praying in Portuguese, English, Tagalog, Swahili, or any other language, whether you're facing modern technological problems or ancient human struggles, Anthony's response patterns remain remarkably consistent. The universality of Anthony's urgent interventions also explains why his feast day on June 13th is celebrated worldwide, with special focus on urgent prayer requests. Churches on every continent report increased miracle testimonies during the week surrounding Anthony's feast day, suggesting heightened spiritual activity during this annual period. But you don't need to wait for specific feast days to access Anthony's urgent assistance. His responsiveness to desperate prayer remains consistent throughout the year because urgency doesn't follow liturgical calendars. When you need help immediately, Anthony's proven track record suggests he's ready to respond immediately. This brings us to practical application. How do you position yourself to receive Anthony's urgent intervention? What specific steps optimize your chances of rapid response? The first step is honest assessment of genuine urgency. Anthony responds to authentic crisis, not manufactured drama. Ask yourself, have you exhausted reasonable human solutions? Are you facing genuine consequences that only divine intervention can prevent? Is your need immediate rather than merely preferred? Genuine urgency often involves deadlines you cannot control: court dates, medical procedures, financial obligations, travel emergencies. These external deadlines create the authentic desperation that Anthony recognizes and responds to quickly. The second step is complete vulnerability in prayer. Don't minimize your need or apologize for asking for urgent help. Present your situation to Anthony with the same clarity and urgency you would use if explaining to a human helper who had power to solve everything immediately. This vulnerability includes admitting your limitations honestly. I have tried everything I know to try. I have reached the end of my resources. I need supernatural intervention. This honesty creates the spiritual transparency that Anthony can work through effectively. The third step is surrender combined with specific request. Ask for exactly what you need, but surrender control over how that help arrives. I need $5,000 by Friday to avoid eviction, but I surrender to your wisdom about how this help should come. This combination gives Anthony clear direction while preserving space for his creative intervention methods. The fourth step is commitment to testimony. Promise specifically how you will share the story of Anthony's intervention. If you solve this urgent crisis, I will tell everyone at my church about your help. I will write about this miracle on social media. I will encourage other people facing similar crises to pray to you. This commitment creates the ripple effect that Anthony's miracles are designed to generate: Comment below and share your urgent situation right away. Sometimes the act of declaring your need publicly creates additional spiritual momentum for Anthony's intervention. Modern miracle documentation provides fascinating insights into how Anthony's urgent interventions adapt to contemporary circumstances while maintaining historical patterns. Medical records, financial documents, and digital communications now provide detailed verification of rapid changes that earlier generations could only describe in general terms. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a Catholic physician in Texas, has documented 15 cases in her practice where patients experienced inexplicable rapid improvement within 72 hours of family members praying urgently to St. Anthony. These weren't cases of misdiagnosis or gradual recovery. They were documented instances of sudden, medically unexplainable positive changes in critical health situations. One case involved a construction worker who arrived at the emergency room with traumatic brain injury from a fall. Doctors prepared the family for the possibility of permanent disability or death. The man's wife prayed desperately to St. Anthony throughout the night. By morning, brain scans showed dramatic improvement that made the medical team order additional tests to verify their equipment was functioning properly. The patient made a complete recovery that defied all medical expectations. Financial institutions have inadvertently documented Anthony's urgent interventions through their records of extraordinary timing in fund transfers, loan approvals, and payment processing. Bankers don't understand the spiritual significance, but their records show statistically impossible patterns of perfectly timed financial assistance to people facing urgent crises. Technology has also created new verification methods for Anthony's traditional area of finding lost items. GPS tracking, security cameras, and digital communications now document the impossible timing and locations where lost items reappear after urgent prayers to St. Anthony. Last year in London, a businessman lost his passport and wallet in one of the world's busiest airports just hours before an international flight that couldn't be changed. Security cameras showed thousands of people walking past the area where he thought he had lost his items. After desperately praying to St. Anthony, he felt an unexplainable urge to check one specific bathroom he had never used. His passport and wallet were sitting on the counter, completely undisturbed despite heavy foot traffic through that location for hours. Airport security reviewed their footage and couldn't explain how the items appeared in that location, or why hundreds of people had walked past them without taking them. The timing was perfect, discovered with just enough time to make his flight, in a location that made no logical sense but felt spiritually guided. These modern documentation methods confirm what Catholics have believed for centuries. Anthony's urgent interventions follow supernatural patterns that transcend normal probability and timing. The digital age has simply provided better tools for recording and verifying what previous generations experienced and shared through oral tradition. Social media has also created unprecedented opportunities for sharing Anthony's urgent miracles globally and immediately. A prayer request posted online can receive spiritual support from Catholics worldwide within minutes. Miracle testimonies shared on digital platforms encourage others facing similar crises and create virtual communities of people supporting each other through urgent prayer. This global connectivity amplifies the testimony aspect of Anthony's urgent miracles. Your story of urgent intervention can now reach thousands of people instantly, providing hope for others in desperate situations across the world. This expanded testimony potential seems to enhance Anthony's responsiveness to urgent requests. Make sure you share this video immediately with anyone who needs to learn about St. Anthony's power for urgent situations. Social media sharing of miracle stories creates spiritual momentum that benefits everyone seeking Anthony's urgent intervention. The psychological and spiritual preparation for praying urgent prayers to St. Anthony involves understanding how crisis situations affect your ability to pray effectively. Desperation can either enhance or interfere with spiritual connection, depending on how you channel the emotional intensity. Effective urgent prayer to Anthony requires what spiritual directors call desperate faith, rather than desperate anxiety. The difference is crucial. Desperate faith maintains trust in Anthony's power while acknowledging your complete dependence on divine intervention. Desperate anxiety focuses on the problem rather than the solution and can interfere with spiritual receptivity. Converting desperate anxiety into desperate faith involves specific mental and spiritual adjustments. First, acknowledge your situation honestly without catastrophizing beyond current reality. "I am facing eviction in 3 days" is honest assessment. "My entire life is ruined forever" is catastrophizing that interferes with faith. Second, recall Anthony's proven track record specifically. Don't just ask for help from heaven in general. Remind yourself of Anthony's 800-year history of urgent interventions. This specific focus helps generate the targeted faith that Anthony responds to most effectively. Third, visualize Anthony's intervention without dictating methods. Picture yourself receiving the help you need, but remain open about how that help might arrive. This visualization creates spiritual space for miraculous assistance while avoiding attempts to control divine methods. Fourth, prepare for rapid change. Anthony's urgent miracles often happen quickly, and people sometimes miss them because they're not psychologically prepared for sudden solutions. Stay alert for unexpected opportunities, unusual coincidences, and inexplicable urges to take specific actions. Many people pray urgently to Anthony, then miss his intervention because they're still focused on the problem rather than watching for solutions. Anthony works through circumstances that might appear natural but are actually orchestrated. Phone calls that come at perfect timing, chance meetings that lead to solutions, sudden insights about actions to take. The story of Linda from New York illustrates this perfectly. Linda was facing bankruptcy after her business partner embezzled funds and disappeared. Legal proceedings were moving too slowly to prevent financial collapse. Creditors were demanding immediate payment. Linda felt completely helpless watching her life's work crumble. Linda prayed desperately to St. Anthony, asking for urgent intervention to save her business. She said the prayer with genuine desperation, complete surrender, and commitment to share her story if Anthony helped her. The next morning, Linda felt an unusual urge to check her business email one more time, even though she had been avoiding it due to the stress. In her inbox was a message from someone claiming to have information about her missing business partner. Normally, Linda would have been suspicious of such a message, but something felt different about this one. The email led to a phone call, which led to meeting with a private investigator who had been tracking her business partner for another case. Within 48 hours, they had located the missing funds and gathered evidence for immediate legal action. Linda's business was saved, and her partner was arrested. The entire resolution hinged on Linda checking that one email at exactly the right time. She later realized that her usual pattern would have been to avoid business emails during such stress, but something had compelled her to look. This demonstrates how Anthony's interventions often come through subtle spiritual guidance that requires psychological preparedness to recognize and follow. Physical preparation for urgent prayer can also enhance effectiveness. While Anthony responds to sincere prayer, regardless of location or posture, certain physical practices help generate the spiritual intensity that urgent situations require. If possible, pray in a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. Urgent prayer requires focused attention, and distractions can interfere with the spiritual connection you're trying to establish. Turn off phones, close doors, and create space for concentrated prayer. Kneeling helps generate the humility and urgency that Anthony recognizes, but physical limitations should never prevent urgent prayer. The heart position matters more than body position. If you cannot kneel, sit quietly with hands folded and head bowed. The important thing is assuming a posture that reflects your complete dependence on divine intervention. Many people find that holding a religious object during urgent prayer helps maintain focus. A crucifix, rosary, or image of St. Anthony can serve as a physical anchor for spiritual attention. These objects aren't magical, but they help create the sacred atmosphere that urgent prayer requires. The timing of urgent prayer often cannot be controlled, Emergencies don't wait for convenient moments. However, if you have some flexibility, the early morning hours between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. are traditionally considered powerful times for urgent prayer. These quiet hours create natural conditions for focused spiritual connection. But remember, Anthony's urgent miracles happen at all hours because emergencies happen at all hours. The documented cases include interventions at every time of day and night. Your desperation and faith matter more than perfect timing or ideal circumstances. Environmental factors can support urgent prayer without being necessary for its effectiveness. A lit candle creates sacred atmosphere. Soft religious music can help maintain focus. A comfortable temperature prevents physical distractions. But none of these elements are required. Anthony has responded to urgent prayers offered in hospital waiting rooms, broken-down cars, and chaotic family situations. The key is internal preparation rather than external perfection. Urgent prayer works because it represents authentic human need, encountering proven divine compassion, not because of perfect prayer conditions. Let me tell you about Robert from Canada, whose urgent prayer experience shows how internal preparation matters more than external circumstances. Robert's teenage daughter had been in a car accident and was in critical condition. He was in a hospital waiting room, surrounded by noise, fluorescent lights, and constant activity, hardly ideal prayer conditions. But Robert's desperation created perfect internal conditions for urgent prayer. He found a corner chair, closed his eyes, and prayed to St. Anthony with tears streaming down his face. He didn't need silence or candles or perfect posture. His desperate father's heart created the sacred space that Anthony recognized and responded to. Within an hour, doctors emerged with unexpectedly positive news. His daughter's condition had stabilized dramatically. Tests that had shown severe internal bleeding suddenly showed normal results. The medical team was puzzled by the rapid improvement, but Robert recognized Anthony's urgent intervention, responding to desperate prayer offered in imperfect circumstances. Share this video right away if you're learning valuable insights about how to pray effectively for urgent miracles. Your sharing helps other people discover these life-changing spiritual principles. The aftermath of Anthony's urgent miracles often brings what spiritual directors call gratitude transformation. People who experience rapid divine intervention frequently describe permanent changes in their relationship with faith, prayer, and spiritual awareness. This transformation serves important purposes beyond solving the immediate crisis. Anthony's urgent miracles are designed to create lasting spiritual awakening that protects people from future crises and enables them to help others facing similar desperate situations. The gratitude that follows urgent miracles isn't ordinary thankfulness. It's profound recognition of divine care that creates permanent spiritual change. People often describe feeling chosen or watched over in ways they never experienced before receiving Anthony's urgent intervention. This enhanced spiritual awareness leads to what mystics call miracle magnetism, an increased ability to recognize and receive divine assistance in future situations. People who have experienced Anthony's urgent miracles often report continued patterns of extraordinary timing, helpful coincidences, and intuitive guidance in their daily lives. Maria from Brazil, whose lost ring story I shared earlier, describes how that miracle changed her entire relationship with prayer and faith. Before Anthony's intervention, she had been a casual Catholic who prayed occasionally. After witnessing impossible recovery of her grandmother's ring, she developed deep confidence in prayer's power and began seeking Anthony's guidance regularly. Over the years since her urgent miracle, Maria has experienced what she calls Anthony's continued care, smaller interventions that prevent crises before they become urgent, lost items appearing before desperation sets in, financial solutions arriving before bills become overdue, health issues resolving before they become serious. Maria believes her urgent miracle created a permanent spiritual connection with Anthony that provides ongoing protection and guidance. This pattern appears frequently among people who have experienced Anthony's urgent interventions. the initial miracle opens channels for continued divine assistance. The testimony commitment that accompanies effective urgent prayer creates additional spiritual benefits. Sharing miracle stories requires people to articulate their faith experience clearly, which deepens their own spiritual understanding while providing hope for others. James from Chicago, who received unexpected inheritance just hours before losing his family home, has shared his Anthony miracle story hundreds of times. Each telling reinforces his own faith while encouraging others to trust Anthony during their urgent crises. James reports that sharing his story has led to meaningful spiritual conversations with people he would never have connected with otherwise. His miracle testimony has become a ministry that helps people recognize divine care in their own lives. This demonstrates the multiplication effect of Anthony's urgent miracles. Your crisis becomes the foundation for helping others through their crises. Your desperate prayer becomes encouragement for others facing desperate situations. Your miracle story becomes hope for people who feel hopeless. Carlos from Mexico, whose brain tumor disappeared overnight after urgent prayer to Anthony, now volunteers at cancer treatment centers where he shares his story with other patients facing desperate diagnoses. His testimony has given hope to countless families navigating medical emergencies. Carlos describes how sharing his miracle story helps other people pray more effectively during their urgent health crises. They learn to combine specific medical requests with complete surrender to divine wisdom. They understand how to recognize medical miracles even when they happen gradually rather than dramatically. The ripple effects of Anthony's urgent miracles create what theologians call community grace, divine blessings that extend beyond individual recipients to benefit entire communities of people facing similar challenges. Comment below and tell me how you would share your Anthony miracle story to help others. This commitment to testimony can actually enhance Anthony's responsiveness to your urgent prayer request. Understanding the spiritual economics of urgent miracles helps explain why Anthony responds so consistently to desperate prayer, while other prayer requests might seem to receive less immediate attention. The spiritual realm operates according to principles that reflect divine justice and mercy working together. Urgent situations represent what theologians call spiritual emergencies, circumstances where human solutions have been exhausted and only divine intervention can prevent serious harm. These situations receive priority attention because they involve protecting innocent people from suffering beyond their control. Anthony's specialization in urgent miracles reflects his earthly experience of crisis ministry. During his lifetime, Anthony consistently provided immediate help to people facing desperate circumstances. His heavenly ministry continues this pattern of emergency spiritual response. The rapid timing of Anthony's urgent miracles serves multiple spiritual purposes. Quick intervention prevents unnecessary suffering while preserving human dignity. Swift response demonstrates divine care in ways that build faith rather than testing endurance. Immediate help creates powerful testimony that encourages others to trust divine assistance. But Anthony's urgent miracles also require what spiritual directors call crisis readiness, spiritual conditions that enable rapid divine intervention. These conditions explain why some urgent prayers receive immediate response while others require longer time frames. The first condition is genuine necessity rather than mere preference. Anthony responds to authentic need for immediate help, not to requests for convenience or luxury. The construction worker who needs urgent medical care receives faster response than the businessman who wants urgent success. The second condition is exhausted human alternatives. Anthony's urgent interventions typically come after people have tried reasonable solutions that proved inadequate. This requirement ensures that miracles supplement rather than replace human responsibility and effort. The third condition is authentic surrender to divine wisdom. Urgent prayers that include willingness to accept whatever form help might take create space for Anthony's creative intervention methods. Prayers that demand specific solutions in specific ways can limit spiritual flexibility. The fourth condition is commitment to testimony that benefits others. Anthony's urgent miracles are designed to serve communities, not just individuals. The promise to share miracle stories creates multiplication effects that justify rapid divine intervention. These conditions explain why Anthony's urgent miracles often involve people who never previously sought his intercession. Crisis situations naturally create the spiritual conditions that Anthony responds to: genuine desperation, exhausted alternatives, forced surrender, and willingness to testify about divine help. Let me tell you about Jennifer from Texas, whose experience illustrates how crisis naturally creates optimal conditions for Anthony's urgent intervention. Jennifer had never heard of Saint Anthony until her sister mentioned him during a family emergency. Jennifer's 5-year-old son had wandered away from a crowded festival and had been missing for over an hour. Police were searching, but the festival area covered several square miles with thousands of people. Every parent's worst nightmare was unfolding in real time. Jennifer's sister suggested praying to Saint Anthony, explaining his reputation for finding lost people quickly. Jennifer was desperate enough to try anything. She had exhausted practical solutions. She was forced into complete surrender because her own efforts were proving inadequate, and she immediately promised that if Anthony found her son safely, she would never forget his intercession. Within 20 minutes of her desperate prayer, Jennifer received a phone call from festival security. Her son had been found at a first aid station clear across the festival grounds. He had followed a family with children who were heading to that location, thinking his mother was with them. The timing was perfect. He was discovered just as worry was beginning to overwhelm him. Jennifer's crisis had created ideal conditions for Anthony's urgent intervention. Her genuine desperation, exhausted alternatives, forced surrender, and natural testimony commitment aligned perfectly with the spiritual requirements for rapid, miraculous assistance. Since that day, Jennifer has become one of Anthony's most devoted advocates, sharing her story with other parents and maintaining constant awareness of his continued care for her family. Her urgent miracle created lasting spiritual transformation that continues to benefit her family and community. Hit that like button if you're understanding how spiritual conditions affect the timing of Anthony's interventions. This knowledge can help you pray more effectively during your own urgent situations. The global Catholic tradition surrounding Saint Anthony's urgent miracles includes specific prayers, novenas, and practices that have been refined over centuries of use. These traditional approaches provide tested methods for seeking Anthony's urgent intervention. The 13-week St. Anthony Novena is specifically designed for urgent situations that require sustained prayer over time. However, many urgent crises cannot wait 13 weeks for resolution. For these immediate needs, the Catholic tradition includes shortened intensive prayers that concentrate spiritual energy into brief time frames. The St. Anthony Urgent Novena condenses traditional novena prayers into 3 days of intensive intercession. This concentrated approach aligns with the 3-day timeline that characterizes most of Anthony's urgent interventions. Many Catholics report powerful results from this focused prayer method. Traditional Catholic practice also includes the St. Anthony bread offering, giving bread to poor people in thanksgiving for Anthony's intercession. This practice connects Anthony's urgent miracles to charitable action that serves communities beyond individual recipients. The bread offering tradition originated from Anthony's earthly ministry among poor and hungry people. By including charitable commitment in urgent prayer requests, people align their needs with Anthony's lifelong concern for community welfare. Modern adaptations of the bread offering include donations to food banks, soup kitchens, and hunger relief organizations. The specific charitable action matters less than the commitment to extend Anthony's care to other people in need. Parishes worldwide maintain St. Anthony Bread Funds that distribute food assistance in connection with prayers for urgent miracles. These programs create community support networks that serve both immediate charitable needs and ongoing spiritual formation. The integration of charity with urgent prayer serves important spiritual purposes. It demonstrates that miracle recipients understand their blessings as gifts meant to be shared rather than hoarded. It creates practical ways to honor testimony commitments made during desperate prayer. It establishes ongoing relationships with Anthony that extend beyond crisis situations. Many people who receive Anthony's urgent miracles report that maintaining charitable practices keeps them connected to his continued care and guidance. The bread offering becomes a regular spiritual discipline that provides ongoing protection from future crises. Let me tell you about Michael from Ireland, whose experience demonstrates how charitable commitment enhances urgent prayer effectiveness. Michael was facing immediate foreclosure on his small farm that had been in his family for 4 generations. Banks had rejected all appeals, legal options were exhausted. He had 3 days to produce money he simply didn't have. Michael prayed urgently to Saint Anthony, but he also committed to sharing whatever food his farm produced with hungry families in his community if Anthony saved his land. This charitable commitment aligned his urgent need with Anthony's historical concern for hungry people. 2 days later, Michael received a visit from a documentary filmmaker who wanted to feature traditional Irish farming methods. The payment for filming rights covered his mortgage completely, with enough left over to expand his food-sharing program significantly. Michael recognized that his charitable commitment had connected his urgent need to Anthony's community-focused ministry. The solution came through showcasing exactly what made his farm valuable, traditional methods that fed communities for generations. Michael has maintained his food-sharing commitment for years since his urgent miracle. He reports continued patterns of extraordinary timing and helpful coincidences that protect his farm and enable expanded charitable service. His urgent miracle created a permanent partnership with Anthony that benefits his entire community. Share this video immediately if you're learning valuable insights about how charitable commitment can enhance your urgent prayers to Saint Anthony. This connection between personal miracles and community service reflects the spiritual principles that govern Anthony's interventions. The Saint Anthony tradition also includes specific intercessory prayers for urgent situations affecting other people. Parents pray for children facing crises. Friends pray for friends in desperate need. Communities pray for members experiencing urgent difficulties. These intercessory urgent prayers often receive remarkably fast responses because they demonstrate the selfless love that Anthony embodied during his earthly ministry. When your urgent prayer focuses on someone else's desperate need rather than your own benefit, it aligns closely with Anthony's spiritual priorities. Historical records document numerous cases of Anthony's urgent interventions, responding to intercessory prayers from people who weren't personally affected by the crisis. Parents praying for missing children who aren't their own. Strangers praying for accident victims they don't know. Community members praying for families facing eviction. This pattern suggests that Anthony responds particularly well to urgent prayers that reflect genuine concern for others rather than self-centered requests. The spiritual energy of compassionate intercession creates conditions that facilitate rapid divine intervention. The effectiveness of intercessory urgent prayer also creates opportunities for community spiritual formation. When groups of people unite in urgent prayer for community members facing crises, it builds networks of mutual support that extend beyond individual emergency situations. Churches worldwide organize Anthony prayer groups that focus specifically on urgent community needs. Members commit to praying immediately for any urgent situation that affects their community. These groups report consistent patterns of rapid intervention in crisis situations affecting their members. Comment below and share any urgent situation affecting someone you care about. Sometimes community prayer creates additional spiritual momentum for Anthony's intervention. The St. Anthony tradition recognizes that urgent miracles often require follow-up gratitude practices that complete the spiritual process initiated by desperate prayer. These gratitude practices serve important purposes beyond expressing appreciation for divine assistance. Formal thanksgiving acknowledges the supernatural nature of rapid intervention, which helps maintain faith when future crises arise. Public testimony shares miracle stories in ways that provide hope for others facing desperate situations. Charitable action extends the blessing received through urgent miracles to benefit broader communities. Traditional Catholic practice includes returning to pray at the same location where urgent prayer was offered, specifically to give thanks for Anthony's intervention. This practice creates spiritual continuity between desperate prayer and grateful acknowledgement. Many people report that their gratitude prayers at the same location where they originally prayed urgently create powerful spiritual experiences that deepen their relationship with Anthony. The contrast between desperate prayer and thankful prayer helps people recognize the magnitude of transformation that urgent miracles create. The location connection also provides ongoing spiritual support during future challenges. People often return to their Anthony miracle location during subsequent difficulties, drawing strength from remembering how divine intervention answered their previous desperate prayers. Church tradition also includes making formal offerings in thanksgiving for urgent miracles. These offerings can include flowers for St. Anthony statues, donations to church maintenance, contributions to charitable programs, or any material expression of gratitude that seems appropriate to the miracle received. The specific offering matters less than the act of giving something tangible in recognition of supernatural assistance. This practice helps ground the miracle experience in concrete action, rather than leaving it as merely emotional memory. Many people establish ongoing relationships with specific St. Anthony statues or shrines where they experienced urgent miracles. They return regularly to pray, offer flowers, light candles, and maintain spiritual connection with the location where Anthony intervened in their lives. These ongoing relationships often become sources of continued guidance and protection. People report receiving spiritual insights, warning impressions, and subtle guidance during visits to their Anthony miracle locations. Let me share the story of Susan from California, whose gratitude practice demonstrates how ongoing relationship with Anthony develops after urgent miracles. Susan had prayed desperately to St. Anthony when her husband disappeared during a hiking trip in dangerous mountain terrain. Search teams had found no trace after 3 days of looking. Susan prayed at a small St. Anthony statue in her parish church, begging for her husband's safe return. Within hours, her husband was found alive in a remote canyon by a search volunteer who felt compelled to check one more area before ending his shift. Susan returned to that same statue every week for 2 years, bringing fresh flowers and praying Thanksgiving prayers. During one of these visits, she felt an unusual urge to pray for search and rescue volunteers who help find missing people. This impression led her to start a support ministry for search and rescue teams. Susan's ministry has provided meals, equipment, and encouragement to hundreds of volunteers who search for missing persons. Her gratitude practice evolved into ongoing service that extends Anthony's care to others through her continued charitable action. Susan believes her weekly gratitude visits maintain active spiritual connection with Anthony that provides ongoing guidance and protection for her family. She reports numerous instances of subtle guidance that prevented potential crises before they became urgent situations. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on because I regularly share stories about how ongoing relationships with St. Anthony develop after urgent miracles. These long-term spiritual connections provide continued protection and guidance. The St. Anthony tradition also recognizes that some urgent situations require community spiritual support that goes beyond individual prayer. Family crises, community disasters, and widespread emergencies call for collective urgent prayer that mobilizes multiple people seeking Anthony's intervention simultaneously. These community urgent prayer efforts often produce miracles that affect entire groups rather than just individuals. During natural disasters, communities that unite in urgent prayer to St. Anthony frequently experience protection that defies statistical probability. Hurricane preparedness prayers to Anthony have resulted in storms changing course at the last minute, sparing communities that seemed directly threatened. Earthquake prayers have preceded unusually mild seismic activity in areas expecting major damage. Flood prayers have coincided with sudden weather changes that prevented anticipated flooding. These community miracles create shared spiritual experiences that strengthen faith across entire populations. When hundreds of people witness the same urgent intervention, it builds collective confidence in divine care that supports communities during future challenges. The multiplication effect of community urgent miracles also creates what theologians call geographic grace, ongoing spiritual protection for areas where Anthony has intervened dramatically. Communities that have experienced major Anthony miracles often report continued patterns of protection and blessing. Mining communities have prayed urgently to Anthony during cave-in emergencies and experienced miraculous rescues that saved multiple lives simultaneously. These dramatic interventions created lasting devotion to Anthony that continues to protect these communities during ongoing occupational dangers. Fishing communities have called upon Anthony during severe storms and experienced sudden weather changes that brought entire fleets safely home. These maritime miracles established Anthony as protector of these coastal populations, with ongoing devotional practices that provide continued protection. Agricultural communities have sought Anthony's urgent intervention during crop failures and received unexpected rainfall, pest control, or market opportunities that saved entire regional economies. These agricultural miracles created lasting spiritual traditions that continue to support these communities' prosperity. The pattern suggests that Anthony's urgent miracles often serve purposes beyond solving immediate crises. They establish ongoing spiritual relationships between Anthony and communities that provide long-term protection and blessing. This community dimension explains why sharing urgent miracle stories matters so much. Your individual testimony becomes part of community spiritual heritage that can provide hope and guidance for future generations facing similar crises. Comment below and tell me about any community crisis that needs Anthony's urgent intervention. Sometimes collective prayer creates the spiritual momentum necessary for large-scale miraculous assistance. The timing patterns in Anthony's urgent miracles reveal sophisticated spiritual coordination that suggests divine intelligence working through multiple circumstances simultaneously. Understanding these patterns can help you recognize Anthony's intervention even when it involves complex chains of events. Anthony's urgent miracles often unfold through what appear to be a series of extraordinary coincidences that create perfect timing for crisis resolution. The construction worker finds the lost ring because his work schedule changed unexpectedly, leading him to a location he normally wouldn't visit. The lawyer works through the night on inheritance paperwork because a family emergency kept him awake anyway, making him available to process urgent documents. These coordination patterns suggest that Anthony's interventions involve orchestrating multiple people's circumstances to create convergent solutions. Your urgent prayer initiates spiritual activity that influences various people to take actions that ultimately solve your crisis. This understanding helps explain why Anthony's urgent miracles sometimes involve people who don't even know about your prayer request. The search volunteer who finds the missing person, the stranger who returns the lost wallet, the business owner who offers unexpected employment. These people often report feeling unusually motivated to take helpful actions without understanding why. The coordination required for such complex interventions demonstrates the sophisticated spiritual authority that Anthony exercises in heavenly ministry. He doesn't just influence individual circumstances, he orchestrates multiple circumstances across different locations and timeframes to create precisely timed solutions. Recent technological advances have provided unprecedented documentation of these coordination patterns. Cell phone records show the exact timing of helpful phone calls. GPS tracking reveals the improbable routes that led people to discover lost items. Security cameras document the perfect timing of chance encounters that led to crisis solutions. This technological verification confirms what Catholics have believed for centuries. Anthony's urgent miracles involve supernatural coordination of natural circumstances rather than suspension of physical laws. The miracles work through enhanced probability rather than impossible events. Understanding coordination patterns also helps explain why urgent prayers should include openness to unexpected solution methods. Anthony might solve your crisis through channels you never considered, involving people you never met, using resources you didn't know existed. The story of Thomas from Germany perfectly illustrates Anthony's complex coordination methods. Thomas needed urgent surgery that wasn't available in his city, required a specialist who had 6-month waiting lists, and cost more money than his insurance would cover. Time was critical. Delaying surgery beyond 2 weeks could result in permanent disability. Thomas prayed urgently to St. Anthony, asking for immediate access to appropriate medical care. Within 24 hours, Thomas received a phone call from a hospital administrator he had never met. A surgical specialist was flying to Thomas's city for a family wedding and had agreed to perform one emergency surgery while visiting. The timing was perfect. The cost was covered by a charitable fund, and the surgery date was exactly within Thomas's critical time frame. The coordination required for this solution involved the specialist's family scheduling a wedding in Thomas's city, the charitable fund having available resources, the hospital administrator knowing about both needs simultaneously, and Thomas's prayer request reaching Anthony at precisely the right moment to orchestrate these convergent circumstances. To outside observers, this appeared to be extraordinary luck. But the mathematical probability of such perfect coordination suggests supernatural orchestration responding to desperate prayer. Thomas's experience demonstrates why urgent prayers to Anthony should include gratitude for coordination miracles, even when the solutions appear to be natural coincidences. Recognizing Anthony's orchestration helps maintain faith and provides testimony that encourages others facing similar crises. Hit that like button right away if these insights about Anthony's coordination methods are helping you understand how urgent miracles work. Understanding these patterns can help you recognize divine intervention in your own life. The St. Anthony tradition includes specific practices for maintaining spiritual connection during the waiting period between urgent prayer and miraculous intervention. These practices help people remain spiritually receptive during the hours or days when Anthony is orchestrating circumstances for crisis resolution. The first practice is active alertness for unexpected opportunities or unusual coincidences. Anthony's interventions often begin with subtle promptings that lead to dramatic solutions. People who remain spiritually alert during crisis periods position themselves to recognize and respond to Anthony's guidance. This alertness includes paying attention to thoughts that seem to come from outside your normal thinking patterns. Sudden urges to call specific people, visit particular locations, or take unusual actions often represent Anthony's guidance toward miraculous solutions. The second practice is continued gratitude even before seeing results. Thanking Anthony in advance for intervention demonstrates faith that strengthens spiritual connection and maintains positive emotional energy during crisis periods. Advanced gratitude also helps people recognize miracles when they happen. People who are already watching for Anthony's intervention notice extraordinary coincidences that others might dismiss as luck. The third practice is maintained openness to unexpected solution methods. Anthony's urgent miracles rarely unfold exactly as people expect. Remaining flexible about how help might arrive creates space for Anthony's creative intervention approaches. This openness includes willingness to accept partial solutions that lead to complete resolution. Anthony sometimes provides help in stages, with each stage revealing the next step toward complete crisis resolution. The fourth practice is continued charitable attitude toward others. Anthony responds well to people who maintain concern for others, even during personal crises. Small acts of kindness during your own desperate situation can actually enhance Anthony's responsiveness to your urgent needs. Let me tell you about Patricia from Canada, whose experience during the waiting period demonstrates how these practices enhance urgent miracle reception. Patricia needed urgent housing for her family after receiving eviction notice, as I mentioned earlier in this video. During the week between her urgent prayer and Anthony's intervention, Patricia maintained all four practices. She stayed alert for housing opportunities others might overlook. She thanked Anthony daily for help she hadn't yet seen. She remained open to housing solutions that differed from her original preferences. and she helped another family organize their own housing search despite her personal crisis. Patricia later realized that her charitable action during her own crisis led directly to her miracle. The family she helped mentioned her housing need to their landlord, who then contacted Patricia about the perfect rental opportunity. Her kindness during crisis created the connection that Anthony used to solve her urgent problem. This experience taught Patricia that maintaining spiritual practices during crisis periods isn't just about personal faith. It creates practical circumstances that Anthony can work through to provide miraculous solutions. Many people stop spiritual practices during crises because stress overwhelms their normal routines. But crisis periods are precisely when spiritual practices become most important for receiving divine intervention. The waiting period between urgent prayer and miraculous intervention often becomes the most spiritually formative time in people's lives. The combination of desperate need and maintained faith creates conditions for profound spiritual growth that continues long after the crisis resolves. Comment below and share what spiritual practices help you maintain faith during crisis periods. Your insights might provide encouragement for others who are waiting for Anthony's urgent intervention. The Saint Anthony tradition recognizes that urgent miracles often serve purposes beyond solving individual crises. These miracles frequently become catalysts for spiritual transformation that affects entire families, communities, and even future generations. Anthony's urgent interventions typically create what theologians call conversion momentum, spiritual awakening that begins with crisis resolution but expands into comprehensive life change. People who experience Anthony's urgent miracles often describe feeling called to deeper spiritual commitment and service to others. This transformation pattern explains why Anthony's urgent miracles frequently involve people who weren't previously devoted to him. The dramatic intervention creates spiritual awakening that establishes lasting relationships with Anthony and deeper commitment to Catholic faith. The conversion momentum generated by urgent miracles also affects family members who witness the intervention. Children who see their parents receive Anthony's urgent help often develop lifelong devotion to him. Spouses who experience their partner's miraculous intervention frequently begin their own spiritual practices. Extended family members and friends who hear testimony about Anthony's urgent miracles often begin seeking his intercession for their own needs. One urgent miracle typically generates multiple new devotees who continue Anthony's influence across broader social networks. This multiplication effect explains why the Catholic Church has consistently promoted devotion to Saint Anthony throughout history. His urgent miracles create spiritual chain reactions that benefit communities far beyond individual miracle recipients. The transformation aspect of Anthony's urgent miracles also includes what spiritual directors call crisis immunity, increased spiritual awareness that helps people avoid future crises or handle them more effectively when they occur. People who have experienced Anthony's urgent intervention often report enhanced intuition about potential problems, greater wisdom in decision-making, and improved ability to seek help before situations become desperate. This crisis immunity develops because urgent miracles create permanent spiritual awakening that affects how people perceive and respond to challenges. The experience of receiving divine intervention generates lasting confidence in spiritual resources that supports people through all future difficulties. Maria from Brazil, whose lost ring story began this video, exemplifies this transformation pattern. Her urgent miracle led to regular prayer practices, increased charitable activity, and ongoing spiritual guidance that has prevented numerous potential crises over the years since her initial intervention. Maria describes feeling spiritually protected in ways she never experienced before Anthony's urgent miracle. She notices warning impressions about decisions that could lead to problems. She receives guidance about actions that prevent difficulties before they become serious. She recognizes opportunities that improve her life circumstances. Maria believes her urgent miracle established permanent spiritual connection with Anthony that provides ongoing care extending far beyond the original crisis. This ongoing relationship has transformed every aspect of her life in ways that continue to unfold years after her initial desperate prayer. Share this video immediately with anyone who needs to understand how Anthony's urgent miracles can transform entire life situations, not just solve immediate problems. This comprehensive transformation explains why Anthony's interventions create such lasting impact. The Saint Anthony tradition acknowledges that some people might not receive urgent miracles in the exact time frame or manner they expect, and provides spiritual guidance for understanding these situations. The absence of immediate miraculous intervention doesn't indicate spiritual failure or divine rejection. Sometimes Anthony's wisdom recognizes that immediate resolution might prevent important spiritual growth or learning that serves long-term benefit. Other times, the crisis serves purposes beyond individual need, teaching patience, building community support, or creating testimony about faith during difficult circumstances. The 3-day timeline that characterizes most Anthony miracles represents typical patterns rather than guaranteed promises. Some urgent situations require longer time frames for complete resolution, particularly when solutions involve complex circumstances that need careful orchestration. People who don't receive immediate intervention are encouraged to continue prayer while remaining open to Anthony's wisdom about timing and methods. Many delayed miracles ultimately prove to be more comprehensive solutions than immediate interventions would have provided. The tradition also recognizes that some prayers for urgent intervention receive answers in forms that differ from specific requests. Anthony might provide spiritual strength to endure crisis rather than immediate crisis removal. He might send human helpers rather than supernatural solutions. He might create opportunities for personal growth rather than external change. These alternative responses still represent Anthony's intercession, even when they don't match original prayer requests exactly. Recognizing Anthony's broader care helps people maintain faith during extended difficult periods. The spiritual guidance for delayed miracles includes continued prayer, maintained charitable attitude, openness to unexpected help, and trust in Anthony's wisdom about timing. These practices keep people spiritually receptive during extended crisis periods. Many people who initially felt disappointed by delayed miracles later recognized that Anthony's timing provided superior solutions to what immediate intervention would have achieved. The waiting period often becomes preparation time for receiving more comprehensive help. Let me tell you about Kevin from Australia, whose experience illustrates how delayed intervention can provide better outcomes than immediate resolution. Kevin faced urgent business bankruptcy that threatened his family's financial security. He prayed desperately to Anthony for immediate financial help to save his company. Days passed without miraculous intervention. Kevin felt disappointed and questioned whether Anthony had heard his prayer. Meanwhile, his business situation continued deteriorating despite his continued prayer efforts. 3 weeks later, Kevin received an unexpected job offer from a former colleague who was starting a new company. The position offered better security and higher income than Kevin's struggling business had ever provided. Accepting the job meant closing his business, but it solved his family's financial crisis completely. Kevin later realized that immediate intervention to save his failing business would have provided temporary relief but not permanent security. Anthony's delayed response allowed circumstances to develop that created superior long-term solution. Kevin's experience taught him to trust Anthony's wisdom about timing even when immediate intervention doesn't occur. This trust has served Kevin well during subsequent challenges, helping him remain patient when solutions take time to develop. Make sure you're subscribed because I regularly share stories about how Anthony's wisdom about timing often provides better outcomes than immediate intervention would achieve. The conclusion of any urgent prayer to Saint Anthony should include commitment to continued relationship regardless of intervention timing or methods. This commitment demonstrates mature faith that recognizes Anthony's care extending beyond crisis situations. Continued relationship with Anthony provides ongoing spiritual support that helps people navigate life challenges with increased wisdom and confidence. People who maintain regular prayer connection with Anthony report enhanced spiritual awareness that prevents many potential crises. This ongoing relationship also positions people to serve as Anthony's instruments for helping others during their urgent situations. Your experience of Anthony's care qualifies you to provide hope and guidance for others facing similar crises. The community aspect of Anthony's urgent miracles creates networks of people who support each other through spiritual practices, prayer intercession, and practical assistance. These communities become channels for Anthony's continued care, affecting multiple people simultaneously. Your urgent prayer to Anthony today might be the beginning of spiritual transformation that affects generations of people in your family and community. Anthony's urgent miracles plant seeds of faith that continue growing long after the original crisis resolves. Whether you receive immediate intervention, delayed resolution, or alternative assistance, your prayer connects you to Anthony's ongoing ministry that has been helping desperate people for over 800 years. This connection provides spiritual resources that will serve you throughout your life. Remember the prayer I shared earlier in this video. Remember the conditions that enhance its effectiveness. Remember the patterns that help you recognize Anthony's intervention. Most importantly, remember that your urgent need connects you to a saint who specializes in impossible situations that require immediate divine assistance. Your crisis is not permanent, but your connection to Anthony can be eternal. Your desperate prayer today might become the miracle story that provides hope for someone else facing impossible circumstances tomorrow. Hit that like button one final time to show Anthony that you're grateful for learning about his power to help in urgent situations. Subscribe and ring that notification bell because I'll continue sharing miracle stories and spiritual insights that can transform your understanding of divine care. Share this video immediately with anyone who needs to learn about St. Anthony's urgent miracle power. Your sharing might be the answer to someone's desperate prayer for hope and guidance. Comment below right away and tell Anthony about your urgent situation. Sometimes declaring your need publicly creates additional spiritual momentum for miraculous intervention. St. Anthony of Padua, patron of urgent causes and impossible situations, is waiting to hear your desperate prayer. The same saint who has worked miracles for 800 years is ready to work miracles for you today. Your urgent situation is his specialty. Your desperate need is his calling. Your impossible crisis is his opportunity to demonstrate divine love that transcends human limitations. Don't wait another moment. Pray the prayer. Follow the practices. Trust the process. Watch for the miracle. And prepare to share the story that will give hope to others facing their own impossible situations. Saint Anthony is listening. Heaven is responding. Your miracle is coming. Pray with confidence, wait with faith, and get ready to experience the urgent intervention that only St. Anthony can provide.